at a minimum, you say 11, the estimate's 11 to 20 million people, of folks who are the preferred employees. Yes, the preferred employees. Immigrants are the preferred employees because they're more vulnerable. You can cut them out of overtime, you can cut them out of safety measures, you can cut them out of anything, they have no recourse. How can this be? And our representatives who are supposed to represent our community turn the other cheek and will not only not do things that will reinforce the base or help the base, but will be things that are harmful for it. So our plea here to the Congressional Black Caucus, our plea to justice for all Americans, especially Black Americans, to the Committee of Eight, is that Americans, the interests of the most vulnerable American citizens, all the studies show that, from Common Destiny, the National Academy of Science, those workers who are hurt by immigration. No one tells anything about it. It's as if it's all positives. But the workers who are hurt are African American workers who are part of the double whammy with our youth, because we see the trends of high computer automation, the trends of the outsourcing. Alan Kruger, in a wonderful study, shows that between 28 and 34 million American jobs, as I point out in my congressional testimony, are subject to be outsourced. And we're not talking about call centers. We're talking about medical imaging. We're talking about architecture. We're talking about engineering. Many of our Black scholars and others who are getting trained in computer science, as Professor Matloff has pointed out, it's been level. Computer science salaries have been level or dropping because of the abuse of the HB1 visas, where Americans have been forced to train supposedly high school but not high school people. All of these, I don't want to, my colleagues will reinforce some of the points, other kinds of points of this devastating bill. But I want to say that this plea on behalf of the voices of the Black community that are not heard, on behalf of the vulnerable senior citizens under the Change CPI proposal, on behalf of the youth, current and future, where if this proposal goes through, we'll be relegated to not only a jobless but almost a hopeless opportunity, because we will never see in our lifetime, in their lifetime, my lifetime is, I'll be pushing up daisies, but in their lifetime, the kind of tight labor market that we had that will provide opportunities for our less skilled and less educated, which are unfortunately African American. Just one final point, I promise is the last one. You know, over the years, I've seen a lot. And when, in the past, always the explanation for the differential between the official Black unemployment rate. You know, Black folks are twice as likely to be unemployed with the official rates, much higher if we go to the unofficial rates. What's the answer? There's always two answers to the economists and the learned scholars gave. They said, well, it's easily explained. First, education. Education. Black workers are less educated than white workers. That applies to differential. Okay, education. I said, then they said there's another reason. It's Black workers don't know the English language. No, they talk robotics. You know, you can't be overspeak robotics. You can't find out can't be hired. It could be robotics, you know. Okay, English. So what do we find? We find foreign workers who have broken our laws and who have benefited from the non-enforcement of our laws. Ask Black folks or ask any of us which of our American laws are not enforced for us. We find that non-English speakers, if we're talking less skilled jobs, and we find less educated people coming from countries with less than a grade school education are the preferred workers in the critical immigrant areas where the majority of Americans work, but we're told that Americans won't work, in construction, the services, and in light manufacturing jobs paying up to $15 an hour. This, folks, is gross injustice, and we plead that at least those who are supposed to represent African Americans in the Congress, or any of those obviously it appears that the Ring of Eight are not concerned about American workers. American workers, and especially African American workers, at least deserve a fair shake in our own country, because we do not have the option of any place else to go. Thank you.
My name is Reverend Peterson, and I am founder and president of the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. And our purpose is to rebuild the family by rebuilding the man. I'm out of Los Angeles, California, the South Central area. And for the last 23 years, we've been not only dealing with the educational issue, job issue, family issue, and other issues in the black community, but I have to tell you, for the last 23 years, we've been dealing with this job issue. It has been a lot of these black boys, and we work with gang members and non-gang members alike, and a lot of them have dropped out of high school because within the public school system in Los Angeles, it's overcrowded. They are overcrowded by illegal aliens coming in to those communities. And the black kids who are citizens of this great nation has been pushed aside because a lot of the illegal aliens don't speak English. And so they're being pushed aside in order to help them. And so after a while they give up. And not a day goes by where there is not a fight between illegal aliens and blacks in the public school system. In the area of jobs, for the last 23 years, we've been trying to employ these young men as we educate them, and it's nearly impossible to do it right now. What we did a number of years ago is we did an experiment where we put some young black males on the street corners where they could get day labor during the day. And 90% of the time, the employers would pick up the illegal aliens and take them along and give them day work rather than picking up the black boys that needed to work, the citizens of the country. And I think it was because the illegal aliens were willing to work for little or nothing, and they didn't have to report it. The employers didn't have to report it. And so today, unemployment is 14%, I believe, for the black Americans. And a lot of blacks are really disappointed in our president, and because I didn't vote for him, by the way, but you know, unfortunately, he's still my president. But they're disappointed because they thought that by him being a black president, the first black president, then employment would go up in the black community. But yeah, it didn't happen. Unemployment went up, and these kids, the young people, are not getting work. In the black community, South Central Los Angeles, Compton, California, the Van Nuys areas and other areas of Los Angeles, violence is out of control. Black Americans are under attack. The illegal alien gang members are coming into those communities, and they are running black Americans out of their own communities. This is Maxine Waters' district, and we have asked Maxine to do something about this. And she has refused to, and I personally believe, because she preferred to vote over helping the people who have supported her over the years. A quick example of that, in Compton, California, when I first moved to Los Angeles, Compton was like 95% black. Today it is 63% Hispanic and 33% blacks. Blacks have left that area and moved back to the south or further west in Los Angeles because of the violence. The gang members are coming in, and they're supported by the drug lords of Mexico, and they have been asked to get these folks out of your community. It's happening, but yet the black representatives will not do anything about it, nor will Barack Obama do anything about it. My friend Jamil Shaw, his son was gunned down 3 doors away from his home by an illegal alien gang member. And they finally took him to trial, this illegal alien gang, they finally took him to trial, and he was found guilty, and he's on death row right now. The situation is out of control within the black community. So we're calling on the Congressional Black Caucus, President Obama and others, do not support amnesty. The last thing we need in our country right now is another amnesty. We need to shut the borders down, keep these illegals out so we can bring black Americans up to standards. so that they can earn their way, they can take care of their families and not rely on the government or someone else to do it for them. We do not need another amnesty. We need to, as Booker T. Washington said, we need to think of black Americans, the citizens of this great nation. So close the borders, no more amnesty, consider the black citizens and their lack of opportunities that they have in this great nation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vernon Robinson, Air Force Academy graduate, class 77, former city council member from the city council in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And Frank, my daddy's 93 and my mom is 90, so if I lose a couple of pounds, I'm gonna try to get some of those Social Security checks. Amen. You know, policy wonks have discussed this issue in many ways, but I'd like to try to make a personal appeal to black women, because in large part, black women run the politics. In North Carolina, black women are 69% of the black electorate because of incarceration and losing voting rights and a number of issues. So to the black women out there, I want to ask you, do you want your son to have a job? Do you want your son to be able to get a raise and not have depressed wages? Do you think that if your son's starting out in a fast food restaurant, they should have to learn Spanish in order to get a promotion as an assistant manager at that fast food restaurant? The black middle class is still a public sector middle class, but we see in Dallas that as a condition of employment for black school teachers, the heart of the black middle class in North Carolina, you have to learn Spanish or lose your job. Perhaps I'm just unlucky and my sample size is too small, but am I crazy, or are the black tellers disappearing in the banks? And did they all become vice presidents? Because what my experience is the black tellers are disappearing and being replaced by bilingual individuals. If you, as a black woman, want a fiancé who has a job so that he can take care of his family, you need to call your Black Caucus members. You need to send them emails. You need to send them letters. Grab them while they're in the district, if that ever happens. And as a former elected official, I'll explain to you that many elected officials don't read so well. In fact, if you give them a one-page executive summary, some of them will say, can you make this a paragraph? But all elected officials can count. And so you need to be part of that count. You need to tell them in so many words, are you crazy? Amnesty has been opposed by any significant responsible black leader, from Frederick Douglass, Booker T. Washington, W.E. Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, and even Coretta Scott King, because of the devastating impact it will have on wages, on employment, in a community that doesn't need to be devastated with lower wages or lower employment levels. It is a matter of survival for black women. We ran this experiment to see if you can replace black men with the government. How did that work out? You need to call your representatives and let them know how you feel, because this amnesty deal is on a fast track, and if you don't say something, it'll be too late. Thank you very much.
My name is Charles Butler. I'm a talk show host in Chicago. You can pick my show up nationally. It's called The Take. I'm also a financial advisor, have a financial advisory practice. In the press briefing kit, I wrote an open letter to the Congressional Black Caucus. And the reason I did that was because in Washington, D.C., where policy is being set, where we're talking about allowing anywhere from 12 to 20 million people into this country who are taking away jobs, who are taking away opportunities from all Americans, but especially black and poor Americans, something needs to be done. Democrats and Republicans are playing politics. The President of the United States, who is an African American, I'm a black American, the rest of most of these gentlemen, I assume, are black Americans, because we did not come from Africa like Mr. Obama, whose father was an African, a Kenyan. He said that he did not have a black agenda. From my research, he's the first president since Lincoln, or before, well, he goes back before Lincoln. All the presidents had a black agenda. This president put this in writing in Black Enterprise, August 2012, for those of you who don't believe me. All I can say is, folks, that we need to get busy. We need to hold these black representatives accountable. We need to hold all representatives accountable on every level, local, state, and federal. In the state of Illinois, it's called a sanctuary state. I moved to Illinois from California about 15 years ago, from San Diego. And I can tell you, as Robinson said before me, I can tell you for a fact, I had too many friends that were denied promotions, denied access to jobs, teaching jobs. I'm not talking about picking fruit, because that's the first place people who talk about immigration want to go. Were denied jobs and opportunities because they didn't speak Spanish. In reality, there are only two languages that are spoken in the world that you need to operate. The first is English, the second is French. And the Spanish that's spoken in the Americas has nothing to do with the Spanish that's spoken in Europe. So what are we doing? We're becoming a third world country. I see this country in serious decline. I refuse to sit back and allow that to happen, as my colleagues here. Now, you have to ask yourself, why does the President of the United States, who's an African American, and black American representatives, 43 of them sitting in the House, refuse to do anything for their constituents, refuse to speak out for their constituents? Not one elected official that I know of has spoken out against illegal immigration. In Chicago, well, the state's a sanctuary state. They have a Hispanic hiring plan at the state. They never had a black American hiring plan at the state. In the city of Chicago, a black person cannot get a job. Black unemployment in Chicago, we estimate black male unemployment is over 50%. This is a travesty. Men are just standing around on the corners with nothing to do. Now, we talk about the shootings in Chicago, there's a little bit of attention being paid to the violence. But let me say this, the Boston bombing, the Newtown shootings, Aurora, none of that compares with 1 month of killings that go on in Chicago. I'm just going to talk about school children alone, just mention it. 2008-2009 school year, we had 399 school children wounded, 144 were killed. Barack Obama never said a word. Barack Obama lives right around the corner from me, where Daria Henderson, the young lady who came to the inaugural, was killed. We just had a young man killed there on Monday. So we have to understand that the problems of the black community are the problems of America. They haven't gone away. But I can assure you this, bringing another 10 to 20 million people into this country who don't speak English, who do not want to become Americans, who are sending $30 billion of remittances back to Mexico, because we can track that. That's what we can track. But $128 billion are leaving this country every year out of our economy, and nobody talks about that. But we have a problem with our economy. We do. We're losing $130 billion every year to other countries. So we need to pay attention, and we need to be vigilant. And all I can say is we will be looking at getting these votes away from those who are supporting illegal immigration reform, because that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm William Owens, founder and president of the Coalition of African American Pastors. Today I will just speak and stand on the shoulders of great people who've gone before us and their position on immigration, and I stand with them wholeheartedly. A. Philip Randolph, who said that excessive immigration is against the interests of the masses of all races and nationalities in this country, both foreign and native. So immigration does not just affect just black people. It affects all of America, all wage workers. I stand on the shoulders of the great former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan, who summed it up in one sentence. She summed up a credible policy in one sentence: those who should get in, those should be kept out, and those who should not be here will be required to leave. And we come to the famous Coretta Scott King, who said in addressing this issue, the devastating impact the repeal would have on an economic condition of unskilled labor and semi-skilled workers is terrible, especially for Black Americans and Hispanics. And I close with this. Defending the interests of our community does not imply hostility to others. Having experienced hostility and racism myself at my age, Black Americans we know only too well the dangers. But Black unemployment is double what it should be, and to bring in massive immigration is an injustice to our country. And I say, as Booker Washington said, cast your buckets where you are, cast your buckets here in America, and hire the labor pool that is here instead of massive immigration. Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Kevin Martin. I'm a member of the National Center for Public Policy Research, Project 21. I'm also a business owner and a writer. I will give a definitive flip to what some of my colleagues have been saying. A lot of your illegal immigrants are not Hispanic. They're not picking fruit. They are not poor immigrant workers. Most of them are people who've come to this country on student and worker visas, who've overstayed those visas. The government knows where they are, who they are, but it's much easier. Like I've always said, if you want to spell another word for laziness is government. They estimate now, this is their estimation, 11 to 12 million illegals. I worked in the government, I'm ex-military. And I can tell you when the government says 11, they really mean 22, 25, 27. And so we saw this yesterday. Politico pretty much answered our question yesterday. They said this is a bond for Democrats. Both parties fundamentally believe, and they've both forgotten how to govern. All we get is pre-issued speeches and teleprompter speeches, and we're supposed to clap and drool like seals once it's all over with. But in reality, what both parties are looking for is a political edge. You have this quote-unquote bipartisan gang of 8, but not one of them includes anyone from our community, how it's going to devastate our community. We saw a legal immigrant and his brother conduct one of the worst terrorist bombings in Boston. Okay, and you know what the government said? Well, we did a background check, universal background check. Russia warned us, and he still somehow just managed to slip through the system. He went back to Russia for 6 months because someone in the government misspelled his name. So you're telling me that if they couldn't do this for 2 brothers, all of a sudden they're going to come out, 20 million people are going to come out of the shadows, as they say, and the government is going to make them, give them a pathway to citizenship, and nothing's going to happen. Now, on the flip side of that, I talked about illegal student visas and working visas. We're saying that this is devastating our community. The young people of today, African unemployment for people between 18 and 24, high school and college grads basically, is 52%. The last 4 years, the African American community and minorities in general have borne the brunt of these failed policies. African American unemployment at one point reached quote unquote 17% by government numbers, but we're talking about 25% in reality. That's why we're standing here opposed, Democrats, Republicans. I'm an independent, standing here and opposing this comprehensive immigration reform. We know it will devastate our communities. We remember what happened after the last amnesty, and they told us that'll be the first and last one. Now what, 30 years later, we're back to the same thing because it's easier to get cheaper labor because A, you can pay them under the table. I know this as a business owner. I've seen my fellow businessmen do it. It's easier if they cause problems to get them deported. if the government takes that step, but 9 times out of 10, they just move to another state and basically move on. So I would like to conclude my comments with that statement. Thank you very much.
My name is Bishop Felton Smith, F-E-L-T-O-N Smith, from Nashville, Tennessee, prelate of the Church of God in Christ, presiding over churches in Tennessee. I want to thank my colleagues for setting the tone and temperament and laying out the landscape for this discussion. I appreciate the fact that they've done in-depth studies, that this is not something off the top of their head. This is not an emotional response. This is a very serious engagement, thought through, prayed over, given attention to, with the most careful indulgence. Ours is not just the preservation of Black America at the expense of any other group. It is an inclusion of all people. We're in a quagmire and we have fallen into this cesspool. And it is impossible to think that a drowning man or sucked into this force where he's fighting and grappling for his life to be able to aspire to the mountaintop and stand at the apex. When we see this peril hurled upon us, what's good for Black America is good for all of America. We have labored 400 plus years. We've given blood, sweat, and tears. There ought to be some remuneration, not just in terms of dollars and cents as a gift, but an opportunity to express our genius, our ingenuity, and to connect with our legacy, which is there. And you cannot dispute the prophetic doings of Black America in terms of what we did 400 years ago that have led itself to where we are today. As a clergyman, I deal with all people from all walks of life. And I am appalled that in various communities, even in Nashville, Tennessee, the state capital of Tennessee, we see overwhelmingly this practice being played out again and again to illegal immigrants at the expense of all minorities and all other persons who may not be as skilled, as fortunate, and they can do better if opportunities were there. We're not asking for a hand out. We're not even asking for a hand up. We can get up and stand up on our own. Just open the door and we'll walk through.
Amen. Well spoken.
That concludes our press conference, and we'll be sure to give interviews individually as they come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was talking to the party.
Excuse me. It's come to my attention that there are a number of folks that have questions. So I was thinking it might be best to take interviews, but maybe we'll take a couple of questions, not just a few from the audience if there are any. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Luis Alonso with the AP, and I'm sorry I came in late.
Yeah, I was tardy to the party too, so.
What I heard is that there is opposition to what you guys refer to as amnesty.
Mm-hmm.
The defenders of this solution say that it's impossible to deport such a big amount of people. So what would be the alternative? What is the suggested solution to the fact that these people are here and they're not going anywhere?
I think one of the main solutions that we are asking for is to make sure that we have a mandatory E-Verify, because we know the reasons why people are coming. People are coming for economic reasons. So if you make sure that the jobs that are available here in the country go to legal workers, go to citizens of the United States, and those immigrants that are able to legally work, we think that will begin to address the problem. So one of the things we're doing now is calling upon the Congressional Black Caucus to reject or oppose any amnesties in favor of a mandatory E-Verify that will make sure that all workers who are entitled to work in the United States will be able to have a job in the United States.
But I understand the bill includes that.
The bill does include that, but the bill does a number of other things. One of the main things that we are highly concerned about is the impact that this bill will have on low-skilled workers. Look at what the bill is doing. One of the main things that the bill does is it creates a completely new W visa for non-agricultural workers. We're talking about workers in the hotel industry, workers in the construction industry, workers in all low-wage working jobs. We will be bringing in, they say 75,000 additional new workers. However, there's also a safety valve in the bill that will allow unlimited supplies of labor because it will allow businesses to bring in additional workers above and beyond that 75,000 cap. We understand what that means. That means that we will have an unending supply of low-wage labor coming into the country. We're opposed to that. We're opposed to the amnestying of an additional 11 to 18 million people. As my dear esteemed colleague mentioned, we really have no idea of how many people that we're talking about here. I've seen estimates from anywhere from 11 million all the way up to 20 million. We understand that this will have a devastating consequence on African American labor, on all low-skilled labor. And finally, the bill also raises the cap on H-1Bs, high-tech workers. So not only are we undercutting our low-wage, low-skilled workers that are predominantly African American, but now we're taking the rug out from under our high-tech workers. Right now we have a visa cap of 110,000. Should this bill pass, or 65,000, should this bill pass, we're now going to increase that to 110,000 people. So we understand that this will have devastating impacts on low-skilled labor and high-skilled, and that's why we're against it. We do need to move on to other questions, please.
Can I'd like to say this real quick because I want to throw some impact on your question. When you say people aren't going anywhere, these 11 million people, at the end of the day, this is America. They don't belong here. They're here illegally. And also, Operation Wetback sent 5 million Mexicans back to Mexico in the early 50s under the Truman and Eisenhower administration with 1/10 the size of the Border Patrol we have today.
Let me just add one thing to that. It's not impossible to solve this issue. All they need to do is shut down the borders, put the military or a fence around the border to stop the flow, and then send the illegals back who have committed a crime in this country, send them back and start cleaning up. It's not impossible to do. They don't want to stop it because they're letting these people come in for the vote. They care more about the vote, especially the Democratic Party. They care more about the vote than they do about black citizens who are unemployed in this country.
Can I just say one more thing? You raised this question from the perspective of the immigrants, which is the fundamental thrust. Our whole concern is that there's another interest that's not being heard. That's the interest of vulnerable Americans. You also pointed out that people are not going anywhere because they have the right to choose not to go anywhere. That choice, which they have, is not a choice that vulnerable workers who are American citizens have. We can't basically go anywhere, especially low-wage, low-skilled ones, go anywhere. This is their country. Often we rarely get beyond our own neighborhoods. So recognize that in that question, the way you pose it, are implicit assumptions that dominate this debate.